Hello and welcome to Experience Your Potential. I am your host, Stephanie McKidd, and we're going into episode number 2 where we are joined by Camila Dempster all the way from the United Kingdom. Today's topic is moderation mindset, so we'll be moving with creativity, courage, and passion towards the dream life and not killing yourself doing it. Cam teaches women how to grow their own self-respect, live a moderation 247 life, and trust themselves again after many moons of diets. She's here to take women from a place of restriction and self-sabotage to power, confidence, and happiness in body, mind, and soul. To give women just like you the invitation to define exactly what you want from your health, fitness, and lifestyle. Then the ability to choose how you're going to get there. She firmly believes that everyone should feel enough and empower women to build beautifully functioning bodies. What you'll find with Cam is a somewhat messy yet dreamy concoction of multiple facets of what she does and has a deep-rooted passion for. And that's going to be the stuff to do with fitness, nutrition, mindset, and pain management, lifestyle tweaks, and the rad-ass tribe of women looking for the same thing: radical self-respect. We had an amazing interview today talking about all sorts of things, including eating disorders, relationships, PCOS, finances, and so much more. Camila even used her expertise to help me dissect why I'm feeling a certain way about a current huge decision. I'm going to take a second to remind you here that we are very passionate about what we teach, which brings on a little bit of foul language, so viewer discretion is advised. And with that said, let's get started. So, hi Camila, welcome. I'm so glad that you took the time to be with me today. I would like, just to tell everybody a little bit actually, Camila and I met through a program, amazing program. It's called BUY, and it stands for Build Your Empire. And it's all basically people that are entrepreneurs, and they are trying to find the best ways to build their business. So it's funny how great the people you meet on this program, because we're all kind of, most of us, you find, have a pretty good story behind where we've come from. And, we've gone through all these struggles, and next thing you know, we're building our own businesses and building our own empires because we just have that drive from where we've come from. So I'm finding a lot of great guests coming from here because the stories are just so amazing and the people that you meet are crazy. So thank you so much for being here. So I know a little bit about your background because we've talked about it over time, but can you tell the listeners where you started, where you've been, and where you are now, and then we'll dig into certain aspects of it as we go.
Yeah, absolutely, Steph. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute honor. And I think I can begin to unravel my story. It's in a fair few parts. I'm a personal trainer and life coach and pain management therapist as my kind of overall thing. But that started really, if I'm honest, when I was 15, I was almost I was above 90 kilos, category of obese. And, that was kind of soul destroying at that point. I really found that I was in a place where I didn't feel comfortable, didn't have belief in myself, didn't trust myself. And that very quickly developed, if I'm honest, into an eating disorder of binge purge, over exercising, 3 hours a day exercising, really, in a striving process to get the body of my dreams. I was literally, damaging myself. So yeah, I went through this process of losing all the weight, gaining a bit back again, losing all the weight again, gaining a bit back again, several times. I think I counted it once. Over a 10-year period from 15 to 25, I'd gone up and down 12 times. Lowest at 45 kilos. The highest was, like I said, about 90 kilos. And that kind of really, all of it gave me a foundation of wanting to become a personal trainer and help, women, especially young women, not go through that shit because it's not comfortable. And, you can just lead a much better life if you trust and respect yourself. So, yeah, I became a personal trainer at the age of 21. I did pretty well here for a gym called David Lloyd. It's a national gym. I ended up working at head office, you know, pushing myself to do really well. But, you know, underneath it all, that was just the face. Mm-hmm. Like, I was putting this massive face on of being the skinny, fit trainer, training the trainers, doing everything right, owning the house, owning the car, doing everything. But again, still quietly killing myself inside. So yeah, the recession hit, still being a personal trainer, working 70-hour week, and really just not being able to afford my mortgage or even to be able to buy food. So I got to this point where I was about to be repossessed, had no money coming in, well, some money coming in, but not enough. And I made the decision to move to Kuwait to, you know, pursue a different alley within health and fitness and start running a gym, which I did. And it provided me with some great money, and it provided me with a great different outlook into culture and how different behaviors work. But this is kind of personally where a ton of my growth came in. Whilst I was there, I met my husband, we adopted a dog, and I mean, unfortunately, I was having some really, really, really bad, like period symptoms. Like I would skip them, they would be heavy, I would be depressed. It was just really uncomfortable. So I started going to a doctor, found out I had polycystic ovaries, which was absolutely soul destroying. I can't even begin to explain. Like, if anyone else has ever been diagnosed with any illness, you know, I'm sure anyone who's listening can empathize the fact that it really does just kind of change your life. And, you know, as I said, I met my husband, and even though everything was going right in the businesses of working for people and, you know, now saving money, I still didn't trust nor believe in myself. And that's really where my growth started happening, and how I got involved with trying to build my own business. Because as I began to unpack all these old bullshit stories of my worth being related to my weight or my house or my car or whatever it was, I then started relating my worth to, you know, what really matters to me, and, you know, the relationships I can cultivate and the work I can do. So, yeah, this is probably about 4 or 5 years ago, this big change happened. And that's where I've grown from until now, where I'm in a place that I help women ditch the binge, restrict, and guilt cycle so that they can just live their best lives. And you know, butterflies makes me happy. I can, you know, I help women just be their best. And you know, that's really not such a quick summary, but that's where I've come from, a few struggles I've been through, and where I'm at right now.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like every single woman out there, especially when like you're a teenager, can relate to those struggles and I think it's getting even worse nowadays with all of the social media and the comparisons that we get through, like everybody putting their best self on to the world, but not being quite honest about what all their struggles are. They just make it sound like, oh, that my life is perfect. So everyone seems to think that there's some, like, I feel like people, and myself included, that they feel like they're not living the life that other people are because of what you see. And it's so frustrating, and it's really nice to be open and honest like this so that people know that they're not alone. And it's normal that every day isn't great, and we don't always feel great about ourselves. And I think it's just so awesome what you're doing. It's amazing. So yeah. I have a friend that also has PCOS, and I know for her the struggle was that like she really wanted to get pregnant. It makes it a lot harder to get pregnant. What kind of struggles did you find that you had from that diagnosis?
So, like, personally, my husband and I aren't there yet. We're not quite ready to be having kids, having just moved back to the UK 6 months ago. Yeah. But for me, you know, it's always been this difficulty losing and maintaining the weight off. That has always been really, really hard compared, back then, if I were to be in that self-comparison trap, comparing myself to my friends or whatever, they would be able to eat what they want without changing. Whereas, if I looked at something, it would change me. So that was something that, really, really started me with it. But like I said, it was just the debilitating periods. There would be certain ones where, like, my legs literally would be numb. Like,
oh my goodness.
and back pain to the point of, not being able to perform at work, and just complete mood swings and energy swings as well. Like the week leading up to my period, I would literally be so fatigued. I mean, couple that with trying to push myself really hard at work, and I would get to these points where I would just be in burnout, and I would, I'm an introverted person, and I would get to this point where I would literally just like lock myself in a room for a week and cancel all my clients because I just couldn't. I was so tired. So tired. So yeah, it really comes down to, instead of having a nice level playing field of energies, where of course there are little peaks and troughs, but it was these big fucking roller coasters of like extreme highs and happy and everything, and then a very, very low hormonal low, which, just really wasn't congruent with what I wanted to be or feel.
Yeah. So. Oh my goodness. I kind of had the opposite experience. Like, I don't have PCOS, but with the binge purge kind of cycle, I had anorexia, and over that time I lost my period. So that's kind of what, it's kind of funny, like, cause I didn't have it for so long, and I knew it was like a bad thing cause I was just way too light and way too skinny. And, now that I'm healthy again and I have it back, I'm just like, I kind of miss those days when I didn't have it. Like, cause now I have the mood swings and the cycles and the, all that kind of stuff that comes along with women's hormones, which I didn't before. So yeah, it's kind of funny how different experiences people have. So, so you mentioned, having, like financial issues and, stuff going on. What made you move to where you did move in that time? Like what was the choice of that actual?
How did that happen? I know. It's the most random place in the world. I didn't even, I'm not going to lie, I didn't even know where it was on the map. Like, really? I remember having a chat with one of my clients before I left the UK, and she was like, "What? Aren't you worried about it?" And I was like, "Well, why should I be worried?" And she was like, "Well, it's right next to Saudi Arabia and Iraq." Okay, maybe I should look at it on a map. But yeah, like, so my mortgage was at the time £1,000. My bills on top of that were £1,000. I then had to eat, which was probably like another 500 quid. So my outgoings, I would guess, like looking back, is about £2,500. Working a 70-hour week during the recession as a trainer, when a lot of my clients started dropping off. This must have been back in like 2012, 2013, no, 2011, 2012. My income was like dropping to like 1,500, 1,600, and I couldn't anymore. I got to the point, and I couldn't pay the mortgage. I couldn't eat. I had to borrow money from people. So yeah, I got to this point where I had to move out of my house, rent it out, otherwise I'd lose it. And I was back at home living with my mum, and I love my mum, but at the age of 22, 23, 24, something like this, when you've had your own house, to have to move back in, that was a really, really hard, uncomfortable growth that I had to go through. And whilst I was there, still trying to pick up hours and get more cash so I could have this thought process and journey of moving back in one day, I just sat there one day on one of these massive lows, crying, and I was just like, fuck it. Google, best friend, personal training jobs abroad, and this thing popped up in Kuwait, and it was a really good deal. Like, instantly I would have been able to pay double my mortgage The money there is fantastic. There's no tax. It's real money. So yeah, I had this opportunity to go out there and start up a gym, and pretty much I just leaped at the chance. So
that's
applied,
amazing.
got the job, and I left. That was it, really. Big scary decision, but I think when you're in such an uncomfortable place, the pain of staying there versus the pain of the change, the pain of the change was a preferential one to feeling stagnant for me. So just made the leap.
Wow. I've always wanted to do, like, I mean, I've moved provinces, if you know Canada at all, so like not too far away from my family and stuff, but I've always wanted to just pick up and go like you did. That's so amazing. Like, just, you know, you arrive, you don't know what you're doing, you're like, it's just a brand new life, and that's so amazing. Especially when you were feeling the way you were feeling, like you weren't feeling super confident at the time and stuff. So it's that's a hard, very, very hard step to take. It's awesome. You did mention something about some relationships that you were in. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I can do. I think, you know, everyone has bad relationships. I was in one from when I was quite young. We actually owned a house together at that point as well. At some point, it got a little bit abusive. It wasn't helpful in terms of shared habits that we had. Like, if I'm honest, we smoked, we drank, we did harder things as well, which again are all massively self-sabotaging things that I was happy to do because I was trying to cover up this feeling unworthy and this not respecting myself enough to say no or I'm gone, because like abuse happened more than once. And you know, if I think about it, when I was younger and I saw or heard stories about women being abused, I was like, why are these women letting them do that? You should just leave. But it's very, very different when you're in that situation. Like, it wasn't a massively bad situation. Like I said, I was hit, I think, two times, but it was a long period of time where it was not necessarily being hit, but it was things in the house being hit or broken with the threat of it being imposed upon me. So yeah, again, it's when you're feeling low and down, understanding that you can respect yourself enough to get out of it is very challenging. And I think as I was younger, before I learned how to deal with all this stuff, the way I got out of this was to push back and then push myself really hard and put all of that guilt on myself, rather than, you know, accepting that's happening, that's fine, but then I have the choice to make a change. So, you know, it's a long time ago. And I think anyone who's been through any kind of trouble in any way, whether it's a relationship, financial trouble, or even just discomfort with like your body, like a eating disorder, anything like this, it all comes from the same place of not having that self-belief and the self-trust to listen to yourself and trust your gut instincts. Like, listen to your heart. Don't just always listen to your head brain. Like, we have a brain in our head, we have a brain in our heart, we have a brain in our gut. And if we can listen to all three, then we're aligned and then we're making changes towards the positive.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you said that those three brains, because I was actually just listening to a podcast the other day and it didn't say three. I like your three. They said two though. Like, you have your brain here and your brain in your gut. And it's like scientific, like even it was actually a podcast on gut health and how important it is, because if your gut's not working properly, it's not talking to the rest of your body properly. And it just hit me when it said like your gut is a brain, because so many times in my life, like my gut, like I don't listen to my gut. Why don't I listen to my gut? My gut is always right. Like, that's my most powerful brain and I don't listen to it. So that's really, really interesting. How did you start what made you start believing in your gut and believing what you're worthy of. And was it something you read? Was it, a course you took, or like what made you make that change where you started to believe yourself?
Yeah. So making a change that benefits you, when you make a change that is aligned with your highest expression, each time you do that and it feels right, it gives you like a little boost of, yes, that's the right course of action. So, I think for me, the big first change that felt really good was moving to Kuwait. And then from there, it kind of snowballed, and I kept picking up more and more great choices that made me feel good. And one of those was to employ a coach who was, she was a life coach. She helped me unpack a load of stories and change them. And then she recommended to me to actually do a life coaching course as well. And it's called MBIT Life Coaching, which stands for Multiple Brain Integration Techniques. It's literally talking about the three brains. So like you said, we have neurons in our gut. We have neurons in our brain. That's what makes it a brain. We also have neurons in our heart. Mm-hmm. And one of the really powerful things that I learned when I was on this course was, if you look back on any of the like really brilliant decisions that you've made in your past, and if you think about what your head was thinking, what your heart was desiring, and your gut was confident in taking action over, if all those three things said like, yes, 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 that point, when you made that decision, your multiple brains were integrated. So it's actually part of the coaching process that I use now, mm-hmm. is coaching people to tune into the awareness of their head brain, what they know logically, their heart brain, what they feel, what they desire, what they find joyful, and then what their gut. The gut is the brain that inspires action, momentum, and flow. So when you have these flow states that are combined with joy and playfulness and happiness, and then combining the logic of the brain and knowing that it feels right, when you can get all of those three brains integrated, that's when you're living at your highest expression and you have ultimate wisdom. And if you can make a decision at that point, that's incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm. I love the passion in your eyes when you're talking about that. That's awesome. So I'm going to use your expertise for a little bit. So right now I'm making a big decision and my gut is like, yes, this could be amazing. And my heart is like, this is what I'm meant to do. And then my brain, my logic is like, this is way too big a risk. What would you tell someone that's thinking that way?
So what's happening there is your heart and your gut brain are integrated. Mm-hmm. Your head brain, your logic brain is in some way. So there would be like a series of questions that I would ask about what you know to be about that decision to help you unpack those answers. Like, I could ask you some questions now. It depends how personal you want to get on your podcast.
Well, I think the risk in this, it's similar to you like opening your own gym type thing. And the risk is just, if it were myself doing it, if I was doing it by myself, I wouldn't have a problem with the risk. But when you have, I'm in a serious relationship right now, but we're not married. And to put that risk on a fairly new relationship, a 2-year relationship, and thinking that if it didn't work out, that would put tension on what we have. And I've been divorced twice. So I'm very focused on making this relationship very strong. And I don't want to put anything on it that could cause stress that wasn't really necessary. Like, I could become quite successful with this endeavor, but at the same time, if it didn't work, I don't think it's worth it to me to put the stress on him. You know what I mean? So that's where my brain is getting all involved in the decision. Yeah. But myself personally is like, yes, I want to do it. And yes, this could be amazing. And yes, yes, but it's like, it's like putting what's more important in your life. And obviously love is more important to me than money. It always will be. But it's also like pulling myself back from stuff that I'm passionate about, you know? So I just don't know how your brain should work in those situations. Does that make any sense?
It does. Like, the thing I would question you to ponder is this. You said, I know,
Mm-hmm.
3 times.
Yeah.
Okay, now linguistically, that's telling me that your brain knows that it wants to do it.
Yeah.
I would actually switch it round, and it's potentially the heart brain, which is holding you back almost, because
Right.
you're fearful of the damage that potentially could happen based on your past experiences, on your current relationship. So then it really becomes about unpacking that fear and that story and the limiting patterns and beliefs that you have around your old stories to build newer and better stories that you can still make that decision that your brain knows it wants to do. And listen and you know, give your heart also what it needs in order to feel safe in the relationship.
Yeah. That's so funny you
Does
said
that
that.
make
Because, and it's so interesting to see someone else's perspective, because in my head it was 100% logic. Like, logically, I'm thinking about the money. But you're so right. It's totally my heart, because it was about my relationship that I'm worried about, not the money. So yeah, that's oh my God, that's so awesome. Thank you. See, everybody, you got to hire this woman. So
I love it.
Yeah. So coming to like all of these changes that you made for yourself and stuff, like where did you end up? Like what more specifically? Obviously, we just saw how great you are at life coaching, but like, what got you back to where you are, and what got you interested in what you're doing now, and what brought you back to the UK, all that jazz?
Yeah, so interesting story again. Like I said, I have a dog. We adopted him. His name's Jack. We adopted him whilst we were in Kuwait. I remember having to wake up at 3 a.m. to walk him through the summer because it was too hot on his paws. It would have to be 50 degrees in the summer.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, if I'm honest, the dog was a driving factor. No, I'm joking. Obviously, I didn't want to have to wake up every day at 2:30 to walk the dog.
Yeah.
But my husband and I, you know, he's been in Kuwait for 6 years. I had been in Kuwait for 5 years. We'd both gotten to the point where we'd grown as much as we could from the culture and the experience. And we really, really wanted to come back home and be around family and kind of start to grow some roots for a bit. So yeah, that's why we made the decision to move back to the UK at the end of December last year, have a little bit of a Christmas celebration, New Year's celebration. And then he's now working at a gym, managing a gym, and I'm building my freaking empire.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah. And yeah, that's what awesome. I do. So I you know, the business, I help women ditch the binge, restrict, and guilt cycle, be that around money or food or exercise or anything. I think, you know, building a life of moderation is really important, and that comes down to, you know, more than just food. Like, I know a lot of like ex-bodybuilders are all for, you know, moderation lifestyle, which is absolutely fantastic, but they often relate it just to food and not being super, super strict with food. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm coming at it from a different point of view, because like, you could do this moderation with food thing, but you could still spend 5 hours in the gym trying to kill yourself for that moderation. So I'm coming at this binge, restrict, guilt from not just food, not just exercise, but a whole lifestyle kind of point of view. So helping women lead the life that they want with their jobs or with their partners or in their finances. Like, mm-hmm. That's what I'm about. Just showing and guiding women to be their best selves.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I think part of that, like where you mentioned that a lot of people, like post bodybuilders or whatever, will kind of counteract their flexible lifestyle with more workouts. It's like the complete opposite of being flexible. Like, you're basically you're basically just starting a new habit so that you can not be as strict on the other habit. And that probably comes from your compulsive exercising, because I also did that. Like where I would just work out 3 hours a day so I could eat this and this and this. And that's just as unhealthy as, so yeah, that's really awesome. You said something about, now I lost my train of thought. What? Yeah. One thing I was curious, like, so your husband or boyfriend is from UK as well? Like, is his family in UK?
My dog, right? Yeah. so he matches my dog. My dog's a mongrel, so is my husband. So my dog's a Doberman and a Husky, and my husband's a South African English person. So he was actually born in Durban. His dad's from Rhodesia, and he met his mom. They moved to Africa where they were born. He lived there until he was around 6. Then they moved back to England when he was 6 or 7. They lived there for a while. He went to university here. He has an English accent. And then I think actually what brought him to Kuwait was the fact his parents moved to Kuwait first to set up a business there, which is kind of what pulled him out to Kuwait. But they're also now back in England. So family's all back in England. I have a mongrel for a husband.
Gotcha. So yeah, I got my train of thought back. Was you had mentioned teaching balance in finances. Do you find that there are a lot of people who, like, for myself as an example, I was raised by, my dad was a very, very, very hard worker, but he also very much instilled in us to save, like be very, very smart with your money. And like, if I got money for my birthday or whatever, it went into a bank account. I never spent it on something candy or like a normal kid would do. And it set me up for success. Like, I was able to buy my first house when I was 20 years old and, all that stuff. But I also find that I missed out on a lot in life in that period, because just until actually I met my current boyfriend, I was still the same way. Everything I made went into the bank, and I have a lot of savings, but I have nothing really, like, I have this passion in me to travel, and I wouldn't travel because I'm like, well, that's just too much money to spend. And yet I'm sitting on all this money. Like, what am I doing? And so now I'm more freely spending it on travel and things that I want to do, and like loving life because of it. Do you find that there are, like, what's more common, do you think, that people spend everything that they make, or that people have trouble spending? Like, because I feel like I really held myself back in all those years. Like, yeah, I was able to make money off of investments and stuff like that, but like, I don't have all these memories that I wanted when I was in my early 20s. Like, you're supposed to live in your 20s, and so yeah, I'm just curious.
I think it comes in like a whole host of different ways. Like, how you and I are both quite different, but we have a similar kind of story of, like, you've had the anorexia and then the over exercising, and I've had the bulimia thing and then over exercising. Very different, but it's kind of the same. And I think a lot of people, women included, they're either in like a couple of camps of they're overly saving and not enjoying life, or they're overly spending and not having security. Or there's the kind of people, a bit like I am, is I'll go through like a massive stint of saving, and then I'll be like, yes, let's spend. So it's like, binge restrict, like, okay, now I've got all this money that I've binge saved. I've restricted myself so much to save this money. Now I'm going to spend it all, but I'm not just going to spend a little bit in moderation. No, I'm going to spend it all so that I feel guilty about it, so that I undo all of that hard work. So there's so many different ways that financial strain can show up. I think it's quite difficult to compartmentalize, I'm just a saver, or I'm just a spender, or I'm something in the middle. There's so many different ways that it can show up. But again, I really do believe that it all comes down to this head, heart, and gut alignment. If you think about a time in which that you made less than beneficial choices, either over saving too much or spending too much in those positions, maybe if we look back with objectivity, the head, the heart, and the gut weren't aligned. Like, you're passionate, that's your heart brain talking about travel. So your heart brain wanted to spend that money, but your logic, head brain was like, nope.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's that balance again between your logic head brain going, yeah, okay, we can save a third, and then your heart brain going, yeah, just splurge this bit on the travel and the bit that you really love, whether it's travel or jewelry or whatever that you really love. And then getting the gut brain involved, so the gut brain can actually make objective choices about the momentum and the flow of how you're going to spend it. So again, it's the same structure that we keep playing out either in food or relationships or financial stresses, pressures. It comes back to the same thing: self-belief, self-trust, and doing what your head, heart, and gut truly, truly want together.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. So doing the work that you are doing now, what do you find, like, statistically, what do most people come to you with issues with? Like, is it mostly financial? Is it mostly diet? Is it mostly self-esteem? Is it like, what do you find do you only work with women, or do you work with
only
men?
work, well, no, I've got a couple of men that I work with, but they are special. The majority the majority of people that I work with are women, just because I find that I resonate with them and I connect with them. And majority at the moment, it's a self-belief around food, nutrition, and body image. That's the real main focus of my business, whilst I'm just setting up here now in Kuwait. But you know, I'm coaching a couple of trainers who want help with their business. I'm also helping people with the finances, so that, you know, it's a wide variety. But like I said, the interesting thing is that it's the same patterns, just disguised in different veils.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I find that for me specifically, and because of the eating disorder background, I find like so much of it comes from control. Like it's like we kind of gravitate to those things that we can, if we feel out of control in one area, it's like we choose something that we can control. Like, and like, when it comes to like relationships or family, or like, we can't control what other people do. So you kind of choose this thing that you can like kind of pinpoint and work towards, and no one has anything to do with other than you. So you can control it. So it's just interesting that
the amount of times I sing the Frozen "Let It Go, Let It Go," you have no idea. All the time to my clients, and I'm not ashamed.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to your business, what's your structure? Like, how do you, like, I know it was something we discussed, that like you have a big structure when it comes to how you do your thing. So explain that for me.
So I will. Like, structure for me, I believe, is really, really important. Without structure and principles, like the methods, there are too many methods to be able to pick through. So the structure and the principles will always stay the same, but the methods by which you go about those principles will change person to person. So yes, my structure is like 5 steps. We decide that you're ready and willing to change, because actually, if you're not ready and willing, then you're not actually going to make any change. Like, the amount of times that I have gone through like an hour-long consultation with someone, and I've asked them the questions at the end, and it's things like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to change? And they go 10, and I'm like, okay, well, how confident on that same scale are you? And they go, 10. And I go, okay, cool. Well, are you ready and willing? And they're like, I'm not sure. Sometimes we can have all of the intention in the world to actually change, but, you know, if someone actually comes straight to the point and goes, look, are you ready and are you willing to put some work in? If you can't say yes to that decision, then, you know, you're kind of failing at the first hurdle. So step number 1 is decide that you're ready and willing. The second step is to define exactly where you're going. and this is kind of like a tagline of mine, is be your best you defined by you, because my best me is probably different to your best you. My definition of where I want to be in the future in 5 years is, happy with my husband. I want a camper van for us to travel in. I want kids. There's lots of things that for me, it's my definition of where I want to be, and I want to be comfortable there. Whereas if I ask that to someone else, or their definition might be, I want to be able to walk up the stairs, or I want to be able to ride my horses, or I want financial freedom. Like, there's so many definitions of where exactly you are going. If you haven't got that defined, you're not going to get there. So step number 2 is define, exactly where you're going. Step number 3 is like to determine how you're going to get there. You see how I'm going with the D's?
Yeah, right.
So determine, this comes down to a few things, like the life coaching. It comes down to understanding your personality type, because if you are a more traditional personality type, you're going to need traditional methods to get there. Whereas if you're a more kind of progressive, forward-thinking personality type, you're going to need more exciting and novel and varied ways to get there. So to determine is, figuring out the exact steps that you need to do to get you to your definition of where you want to go, and then also figuring out, and this is the next step, is detecting the obstacles that are going to get you there. So if I give an example right now, like the common one that I'm working with is the woman who wants to be able to ditch the scales. That is the definition. They want to ditch the scales. They've decided they're ready. They are kind of like a mixed personality type. So the things that they need to do is, not throw the scales away straight away. They're going to just put them in a cupboard. They are going to start trying to practice moderation with their food, and they're going to do that by eating slowly and eating to 80% full, and then they're going to just go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week rather than aiming for 6. So those are the ways they're going to get there, they've determined. And then with those ways, there are going to be obstacles. So again, same example, if they taking the eating slowly part, because I think that's really powerful for someone who's trying to moderate their food. The detection of the obstacles that they often come up with that are really common is that, they're eating at their desk, or they're eating between the school run, or they're eating and they're rushing, they don't have time. So that's a massive obstacle for them. If they can't sit down and have a meal at a table, being able to eat slowly, if they're trying to shovel it in from a Tupperware in the car, is going to make it like 10 times harder. So they're going to be more likely to fail. So without understanding exactly what the obstacles are, can't overcome them. So detect the obstacles and then figure out ways to overcome them. So again, that same example, if it's they're rushing between errands and picking stuff up, it's, well, could you schedule that in to your diary? Like, someone listening to this, that's going to sound like the most simple thing in the world. It's a logical step process. And that's a really simple example. And it applies across to the finances as well. Like, if you want financial freedom, and one of the obstacles is that you save so much you don't have freedom, the obstacle is that when you go to spend that stuff, some fear crops up, right? So you don't. Well, how do you overcome that obstacle of fear? Well, perhaps you start with smaller amounts. So you just go get your nails done or something. Go on a shorter trip, and you build up. So it's understanding exactly what the personal obstacles are, and then coaching the client into finding out the ways to overcome that. Which brings me nicely to the final step number 5, which is just go do it. Yay! The gut takes over, the action center brain takes over, and you just got to go do it. Go do it with creativity, courage, and compassion. And that's where, it's my job as a guide by someone's side to keep reminding them that, you know, they decided they were going to go do this. So I'm going to make them do it.
Yeah. Right. It's actually funny that you mentioned like this is one that's so typical, and then you mentioned the like eating from your Tupperware as fast as you can in your car. Do you find that you're working with a lot of people that used to compete? Because I like that was me back, like that's a competitor life when they compete in fitness competitions. It's like you have to get in this food and you're always in a rush, and I find that those types of people, it's very, very hard to get back into flexibility and what you really should be doing and slowing down and like really doing nutritious things for your body, because like there's so many times that you're eating because you need this much amount of protein to build this amount of muscle. So you're almost forcing yourself to eat too much, like you don't even want to eat, and you're eating. And then for me, it was very, very hard to get back into a like eating slowly, stopping when I'm full, whether I've eaten enough calories or not, or, you know, like just that balance of, you know, eating when your body asks for it. So I was just curious whether you have a lot of people that were competing in the past.
You know, it's funny because, again, this comes back to the whole thing of like, we're all different, but we're all the same. I think, you know, the most common type of person I work with is a student or a mum, and
right.
They're packing lunches, they're packing things. I think it's everyone in the fitness industry used to say, go Tupperware, prep your food, you know, food prep Sundays, hashtag, whatever. It's kind of become this thing that if someone has a healthy lifestyle, they're expected to food prep and they're expected to use Tupperware. And when it's been practiced for so long, whether it's, you know, from childhood when you've had packed lunches at school through to being a student where you haven't got a load of food, so you go buy I don't know whether you have this in Canada, but a Dairy Lunchable is like a pre-packed.
Totally. My daughter eats them.
Sorry.
She likes them. I try to like not give them to her too often.
It's like ingrained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Moderation. It's moderation.
Yeah.
But it's ingrained, you know, pre-packed meals from McDonald's or a pre-packed, like, you know, you go on the motorway on the motorway to London from Bristol, there's a service station, and I would stop there when I was working in London. I would stop there and grab, and I think it's common for people who travel a lot, is they'll grab like from the store, like some chicken from a packet and a salad from a packet. And although it's a really balanced, nice meal, the fact they're shoveling it from a Tupperware changes how the body reacts to it. Right. So, it's interesting. I think a lot of people have the whole Tupperware mindset.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Whether they compete or not. Yeah.
So, just like I'm taking notes as you talk too.
Carry on.
So how do you help people that aren't ready to jump into the moderation mindset?
It's really hard, huh? Yeah. Well, if I think back to and tell a story about it of when I was there, you know, I had this doctor's appointment and they told me I had PCOS, and, you know, having been a very holistic trainer, I understood that, you know, potentially these hormonal problems that I had were caused by all of the extreme exercising and the extreme dieting that I'd done in the past, potentially. I knew in my gut that I should moderate my food, but it probably took me about a year to come to terms with that and actually be ready and willing to do it, to decide. You know, and that's the point of contemplation. That, you know, haven't decided to go for it, you're contemplating it. And so all I can advise to someone like that who's not quite ready is just sit with it. Just sit with it, research it, understand where you're coming from. I've been having quite a few conversations about this recently, actually, of a spiral. Often when we feel like we're changing, either to a new job, for me, a new country, or, you know, getting kids, or something big has changed, there's a period where you've been really, really comfortable where you're at, whether it's comfortable or not, but it's secure because you know it, it's known, so therefore it's comfortable. When you then are on the cusp of decision to change, you're on this upward spiral, which it feels like you're going backwards, but in fact, you're not going backwards, you're going around and up. It's a very, you're on this spiral upwards. It's an uncomfortable growth. And you need to realize that if you're in contemplation and you're not 100% comfortable where you are, you're already on that path, that spiral backwards around. And although it might feel like a regression and as if you're not getting anywhere, you're just going around and up. And when you come out the other side and you're ready and willing to change, like that shit's like magic right there. Yeah, like for the people who aren't quite ready, all I can say is just like really sit with it, listen to your body, and like reach out to your friends or a coach, or, you know, speak to you or speak to me, like speak to anyone, anyone who's been through this kind of change and has experienced it for themselves. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm sure. But for me, if anyone came to me and asked advice, I would give them an hour of my time for free just to sound them out and help them make some choices. Like, I think anyone who's been through a process of change is willing to mentor, in effect, other people who are on that cusp of contemplation. So, yeah, if you're there, reach out.
Yeah.
And listen to what the universe is trying to tell you.
Yeah. And you're so right, because it's when you've gone through all these changes in your own life, it's like, I mean, you're proud of yourself for being where you are now, but nothing feels better than helping someone else
100%.
make their way through that same thing, because you get it. You know how hard it was, and you know how yourself how long it took you to get where you want to be. So I was thinking of one of the quotes that you said was feel the fear and do it anyway, which I like totally love, because I can totally relate to that right now, because we just had that conversation. But like when you tell people that, does it motivate them? Are they just like, yeah, you're right, let's just go do this? Or do you find people still like really struggle? You know, like it's
some people just like rolling their eyes like, fuck off. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it depends on the mindset and where you're at in that contemplation or decision phase. If you're in contemplation and someone comes up to you and says, you know, just go do it, you literally fuck off. So yeah, that's a case of mindful coaching. And, you know, pick the quotes that work for the people. And yeah, I love that quote. But if you told that to me 3 months ago when I was 1.5 months in, I was feeling low on cash, I would have told you to fuck off as well. Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt like at the dentist this morning when he was saying that. He's like, you'll still be kind of awake, but I promise you won't remember anything. I'm like, just fuck off. I'm like, I'm terrified. Don't you get this?
Really?
But yeah, for those of you that don't know, I have to go in for wisdom teeth surgery tomorrow. So I'm terrified. So when you're doing a consult with somebody and they haven't reached that stage, like you go through those first few questions and you're really excited for them because they appear to be ready. And then as you kind of dig deep, you're like, you're not ready type. Like that's maybe what you're thinking in your head. What do you like? Do you still take them on as a client and you get them to that point, or do you kind of, say sit with it until you feel a little bit more ready and then I'm happy to help? Or like how far do you think you are ready? How far do you think you are from being ready when you have 10 out of 10 on those two first questions, and then you realize that they're ready, but they're not ready to make the changes necessary? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get the question. So like, what do I do if someone thinks they're ready, but I know that they're not ready? Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think if they are at that point of, 10 out of 10 is really important, and 10 out of 10 they're confident that they can, but, if I ask them if they're ready and willing and they say, not sure, then it's a case of retracing a few questions to, dig a bit deeper into the why. Tony Robbins, one of his really, really big quotes is, find your why, find your way. Mm-hmm. So digging deeper into the why for that person mm-hmm. to help them uncover, exactly where they're going, their definition of where they're going, that can really help them get ready and willing. Like by the end of a call with a new prospect or a new client, I would always ask that question right at the end. Are you ready and willing to start? And if the answer is yes, then I will start with them. If it's no, that's so cool. I really respect you for not being okay. And I'm 100%, maybe it's a bad business model, but I'm 100% always here for that person if they ever want, and, if they are ready to change, because sometimes they just need time. Like, yeah. I spoke to one client in the end of January, and this conversation happened, and at the end of the call he was like, no, I'm just not ready. He emailed me last week and he was like, yeah, I'm ready now. So now we're starting. Awesome. So yeah, I don't like to be a pushy salesperson mm-hmm. because if I am, then it devalues the product because they're not going to put their side of the work in. So really, why should I and them expend all this energy and time and money on a thing that's not going to help them? So right. I'm only going to take on people who are ready and willing. And if that means 60 or 80 or 100% of the time, I'm say like people get to the end of the call and they're like, oh, it's just not the right time. I'm 100% happy with that, because hopefully by the end of that call, they know me enough to understand that I'm always going to be there when they're ready. So yeah. It's just a question of time. Yeah. And sometimes you have to sit back and ponder. So that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. I'm loving this call. I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, we're already on an hour. I don't want to take too much of your time, but where can we find you? I'm sure a lot of people are resonating with things that you're saying. So if we need to find you, where can we find you?
Yeah. So, mainly, I hang out on Instagram a lot, which is at Camila Dempster. I won't spell that because it's long, but I'm sure there will be show notes.
Yeah, I will make sure I put everything in the comments.
Yeah, and I have also, if the food stuff, the binge, restrict, guilt cycle is resonating, I have a 14-day online challenge, which is Moderation Mindset, and that can be found at nlperform.com/moderation mindset.
Perfect.
So Instagram and the challenge. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. I'll make sure I post those below. One last question I'm going to try and ask everybody a little bit about is, what do you know now? What do you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago?
Literally, my dog's just come in the room, so it would be okay. Like, don't get a dog. No. Always get a dog. One thing I wish I'd known 10 years ago. Just trust yourself, because, more than anyone what's right and the best thing for you. And if it feels uncomfortable, it's probably the right thing to do, because growth is uncomfortable, and that's where you get to be your best you. So yeah, just trust yourself and be uncomfortable, or comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I oh my goodness, I learned so much. I want to hire you. I learned so much from you today.
I think you.
And I guess I'll see you in the buy group, probably, all the time, I'm sure. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And I'll make sure all that information on where to find you is in the show notes, so that everyone can find you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It was great to chat to you, and good luck with your wisdom tooth removal tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. I don't know about you, but I got so much out of that conversation with Camila. My favorite part is those three brains, our heart, our head, and our gut that need to be in that perfect alignment for us to make the best decisions for our future. If as you were listening along, you thought of someone who could really benefit from what we were talking about today, I would love for you to share with as many people as you can think of. I would also be forever grateful if you headed over to iTunes to give me a review so I could make every single episode just a little bit better. If you want to get in contact with Camila, I will have all of her information as well as her program listed down below in those show notes or on iTunes or on my website at www.operation-lean.com. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in, and I can't wait to talk to you and my new guest next week. Remember, it's never too late to experience your potential. Have a great week, guys.